Hi everyone, and welcome to week 6 of 5990. And in this week, we're going to be talking about shared value creation. This is admittedly a subject that's very near and dear to my heart. I've spent most of my career kind of working in this space and studying this space. And in reality, it's kind of the cutting edge in terms of where we're at with theory regarding corporate social responsibility. So I definitely wanted to include a unit on it in this course. So let's talk about a few things before kind of getting into the nitty-gritty here. A typical corporate strategy, if you were to ask somebody that's part of strategic planning in a corporation, kind of what they are doing, they would probably have a response like this. All right, so let's see. Let's just look at this graphic here really quick. Establish HP as the world's leading information technology company. Okay, clear goal, clear purpose, and how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to do that through efficiency, they're going to do that through targeted growth, and they're going to do that through an improved capital strategy. This graphic's old, but I pulled it out because I think it's a good, just kind of visual representation of what we're talking about here. So when we look at a company, typically their strategy is concise, it's legible, and it's you can implement it. All right? There's a lot of forethought that goes into strategic planning like this. But now if you were to ask the same company, what is their social strategy, we would probably get a response that's more akin to this. Right? And I call this kind of like the shotgun or the spaghetti on the wall approach. Right? The spaghetti thrown at the wall. So you have a lot of different investments, into the community. You're giving away, donations to philanthropy. Maybe you're investing into some cause-related marketing campaigns or something, workplace diversity or something like that. Whatever. Right? You have all of these different initiatives that you're investing in. But there's really no sort of like rhyme or reason to them. Okay? There's no really kind of underlying driving strategic planning that goes into what we're doing here as a company on the social front. And this is actually an issue for a lot of companies. A lot of companies do not have some sort of planning mechanism when it comes to their social strategy. Right? And we're actually going to see this with New Balance. Right? So the case this week is on New Balance, and New Balance is admittedly, like on paper, like a very good company. They're doing a lot of good things. They invest a lot of time, resources, money into social causes. And arguably they're doing a lot of good things in the marketplace, but it's really kind of just haphazard. Right? There's not really any sort of underlying theme or strategy or purpose behind all of what they are doing. Right? So the idea is, how can we take our social strategy, which looks like this, and get it into something that looks more like this? All right. Now, the idea here is moving towards a concept or a philosophy that's called shared value creation, or shared value, SVC. Okay, and so I talk about it in the podcast, but I'll run through it here really quickly. So what I said in the podcast is that when we try to create competitive advantage, okay, and competitive advantage, if you haven't taken business strategy yet as a course, or you're not familiar with the term, it's really just what we do above and beyond the competition. It's what differentiates us from the competition. Okay, so CSR can actually feed into competitive advantage if we analyze the 3 different ways that a corporation actually interacts with a society. Right, so when a corporation interacts with society or intersects with society, we can look at the issues that society faces and how they compare to a corporation. And we can classify them in 3 different ways. So one of the ways is generic social issues. Okay, so a firm's operations don't affect firm's operations do not affect society, and the issue is not material to the firm's long-term competitiveness. That's the definition here. All right. So think about this. This is like, Abercrombie and Fitch and people experiencing homelessness, for example. Okay. It's a social issue that exists in society, but it doesn't impact the firm in a material way. Okay? Compare this to a value chain social impact. So a value chain is just the things the activities that we put into creating a product. So this is our raw material collection, our manufacturing function, our sales function, warehousing, things like that. All of the stakeholders that we affect along the way. All right. So this could be an impact on our value chain, or this could be classified as something called a social dimension of the competitive context. All right. So this is a social issue. It's a social issue in society that is actually materially affecting our firm. All right. So it could be something that is materially impacting our firm, but it is also a social issue in society. Okay? So it's a bit of a spectrum here. Now, referencing the graphic that Porter and Kramer put out in their Harvard Business Review article, if we take a look at these methods that a company can interact with society, we have two kind of levels of social involvement, and we can call them responsive and strategic. So under responsive, we're just kind of doing knee-jerk reactions to issues in society. So we do address these generic social impacts. Maybe we contribute money towards them or something like that through good corporate citizenship. We try to mitigate harm in our value chain. We try to mitigate like environmental damage, and we recycle and stuff like that. Okay, it's all good stuff, but it's very responsive, okay, to what is going on. Now, more strategic CSR. All right, we try to actually look at our value chain, and we try to do things that transform the value chain in such a way that we can create social impacts that benefit society. But at the same time, we're looking at this through a lens of trying to reinforce our corporate strategy. We're trying to strengthen our core business through our value chain impacts. And honestly, that can be a powerful force. Essentially just increasing our competitiveness through the social dollars that we invest. All right, so this is what this graphic looks like here. All right, so on the one hand, we have responsive CSR. So we're just trying to be a good citizen. We're trying to mitigate harm, all good stuff here. But more strategic, right? We are trying to target the social dimensions of the competitive context here. All right, we are trying to basically leverage our capabilities, do things that are in our wheelhouse, right, in order to improve these elements of society that actually materially impact our business. All right. All right. So this is kind of the quadrant that we want to steer towards. We want to target our efforts towards things that matter to our business. Okay. And so a lot of times I will get pushback from students at this point in the lecture. And the question inevitably becomes, so is it wrong? Is it bad that a company is doing something like this under the guise of strengthening their bottom line? And honestly, I say no. Like, I don't have a problem with it, because if a company is able to invest this time, resources, cash into creating this social good, and it helps their company, it strengthens their bottom line, then honestly, like, I'm all for it, because that is basically like indicative of the fact that a company is going to continue to invest in these particular areas. All right, so I'm all for the shared value approach. I think that a company that is both strengthened by investing in social causes is, fantastic, and I hope to see more of it. So with regards to this, Porter and Kramer say that we need to focus on the competitive context. Other consultants, other thought leaders in this area have kind of similar views, but they tweak it a little bit. All right, so this one I refer to kind of as strategic CSR. Strategic in the sense that we're not manipulative, but we're just thinking about what to invest in. Okay, we have a plan, a strategic plan in terms of what we want to invest in, rather than just being ad hoc. Okay, so I call it strategic CSR. A couple of guys out here, they actually put forth a five-pronged profile of what a strategic, quote, CSR initiative will have, okay, in terms of its ability to generate value. All right, and I talk about this on the website, or on the web page there, so I'll just go through it really quickly. So centrality, how close it is to your business; specificity, how much value you can appropriate; proactivity, whether it's responsive or proactive, whether it's voluntarily initiated, and then how visible the actual action is. Okay. Other consulting companies, so this is the Boston Center for Corporate Citizenship, the B Quad C here. They have their own framework, and I won't go into this into too much detail. This is just to illustrate that there's a lot of competing theories that have a lot of the same spirit behind them, I should say. Okay, so in this particular framework, they're saying that companies should move from this sort of stage 1, stage 2 sort of mentality, where they are just being reactive and they're just focused on PR, that type of stuff, or they should go into a 4 or 5 stage, okay, where they should be looking at being proactive, being champions of different CSR initiatives, and really defining how companies analyze issues and things like that. So if you're interested in this, I would actually encourage you to go to their website and take a broader look at this. Interesting proposal that they have. And in other veins, we see a lot of the same logic. So we have this CSR continuum from James Austin, where he's essentially arguing that we should move from just a pure philanthropic model. And a philanthropic model is where we just, we're giving money to nonprofits, we're donating to causes, we're doing things that, on the surface are good, but really, just throwing money at problems is not a good solution to these particular issues. Rather, we should be more integrative, where we have a kind of a hybrid between what our firm's strategy is and what we're doing in the social space. So high levels of engagement, broad scope of activities, all that good stuff. So this is another one that I would encourage you to look at, but it's kind of beyond the scope of creating shared value here. So elements of strategic CSR. So we're going to be looking at this right here specifically. All right, these 5. So first of all, centrality. Is it aligned with the mission, vision, values, capabilities of the organization? All right. Does it make sense given what we are doing? Right. That's really the main question. Does it make sense given what we are as an organization? And inevitably, I bring this question up in my class, like, why do you think centrality matters? Why is this so important to an initiative? Well, we can understand that as an organization, if we have if we're an auto manufacturer or whatnot, we have a certain level of skills and abilities around a certain product, a certain cause. Okay, so let's say we're like Campbell's Soup, for example. Okay? If we are targeting issues related to hunger, we have a lot of skills, abilities. Our supply chain is organized in such a way that we can properly tackle this problem. So it makes sense for our organization because we can efficiently contribute to this particular social issue based upon our skills and resources. All right. This also relates to issues of fit, which we'll go to in just a second. Right. The second issue is specificity. Okay, and this is arguably a very contentious point, but essentially what we're looking at here is if we do something good in the marketplace, are we able to capture the value that's generated by that particular activity? Value capture. Okay, so let's focus on this for just a second. Us being able to capture the value of a particular activity. So value capture is a really interesting topic in the whole strategic management literature. So we have to ask ourselves this question. So when a firm innovates, when a firm does something new, when a firm does a new activity or different activity or something like that, who actually captures the value of that innovation? All right, well, on one side of the pie, we look at the firm. Right? So the firm actually captures that value in the form of increased profits. Right? So on the flip side, though, the customer could actually capture that value in the form of a consumer surplus. So in this case, that's a benefit to the consumer above and beyond the economic cost that they incur, okay? Or a societal benefit. So we've improved the community, we've improved the nation, we've improved the environment, or something like that. So that's how we absorb that particular value. Or, we can even look at competitors. So competitors will absorb that cost through either imitation, or they will copy our ideas and experience lower development costs and things like that. So competitors can actually appropriate some of the value from our particular innovation. Okay, so with regards to specificity, we're hoping that our firm can actually appropriate some of the value that's coming out of these investments that we are making in this particular endeavor, with the hope that over time, sure, the customer is going to ultimately reap a lot of the benefits with regards to social value creation. Right? So kind of an enlarging of the pie, both in this segment and in this segment here. Right? So shared value really ties these two together. Okay. So value capture, and I stress this a lot because value capture is really, really an interesting subject with regards to corporate social responsibility. I have a couple of examples here on the screen. So Jonas Salk, who invented the polio vaccine, actually didn't capture any value from his particular innovation. He put the patent out for free and said that this should be an invention that society benefits from. So by making it public, 100% of the value was captured by society. Right? Compare that to Microsoft. So when Microsoft invented Windows, most of the value was actually captured by Microsoft. Okay? And we can see why. You've all grown up using Windows products, or Apple products, I guess now, but Windows products for a lot of you. All right, so this went to the company. Now the hoverboard, if you have anybody or you have children or something that uses a hoverboard, what's interesting about this is that there's rampant imitation, and many companies are producing their own versions of the hoverboard. So actually most value in this particular invention is captured by competitors, all right, because of the rampant imitation. All right, so 3 kind of stark examples that highlight each of the sections of this little pie chart here. All right. So let's look at value capture. Let's talk about value capture with 2 examples here. All right, and I have this on the website, but I'll go through it again here. So let's say we have 2 companies. We have Smith Omnicorp. They manufacture pet sunglasses, and you have 2 choices. Let's say you're a strategic manager at this particular company, and you can choose to either invest or throw some social dollars at the local symphony, or you can invest in some energy cogeneration technology for your manufacturing plants. Now, energy cogeneration, think of this as maybe it's like a device that sits on top of the smokestacks of a company and absorbs waste heat and gases, and is able to either sequester them and recycle them, and ultimately generate more energy for the particular plant. Okay. What would this look like for each of these choices? So you could argue that, sure, investing in the local symphony is good overall for humanity, people that enjoy the arts, and you think that this should be something that's supported. That's awesome. Okay, but a lot of the value capture for this, okay, is in this right here. Okay, consumers are absorbing this value capture in the form of a societal benefit. Okay, and it's not bad. Again, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. This is, for a lot of people, this is truly a good thing. Okay, but now for energy cogeneration technology, what you're doing, okay, is you're sequestering a lot of waste products that could be put out into the atmosphere. So there is some sort of consumer surplus that's going on here, but you're also saving costs, all right, because you are generating more energy per pound of waste. Okay, so it's going to reduce your energy bill. So the firm in this instance is going to be appropriating a lot of the value created by that particular social movement. All right. So both of these are generating value for society in some way, either through the proliferation of the arts or through environmental preservation. But a firm in this case is able to capture more of the value for option 2. Right? And so that's kind of what that is getting at here. All right. So a couple of other things with regards to strategic CSR. So proactivity. How well is our firm anticipating social trends, expectations, and responding to them? This gets back to kind of week 1 and what we were talking about with Wharton Cochrane's extension of this definition of what constitutes corporate social responsibility. And this idea that the best firms, or the most socially responsible firms, are the ones that are very proactive. Okay? Are they doing something that really allows them to connect with their stakeholders? They're better positioned for things that happen in the marketplace, and they're better able to weather changes. weather changes in the social environment. All right, so we're looking for a degree of proactivity. They say volunteerism. Are the activities being undertaken freely or through response to legal, economic, industry pressure? All right, I have a contention with this. All right, this can be debated, I think, but just for sake of complexity, I wanted to, completeness, I wanted to present this. So, the argument is that stakeholders respond more positively to voluntary actions. And there is some research to say that this is true, but it's kind of mixed. Okay, there's some research that also shows that this is not the case, but ultimately this is part of their particular framework. Visibility, though, I think is without paramount. Like it's obviously a part of this particular framework here. If you're doing something, people need to be aware of what you're doing. It needs to be visible somehow. Now, this is going to be a huge portion of the New Balance case study that you're doing this week. All right. One of the drawbacks, one of the things that the owners were very hesitant about engaging in were, kind of being hubristic, showing the world kind of what they were doing with regards to corporate social responsibility. And sure, you could argue that that's a virtue, but at the same time, how are you going to better engage with your stakeholders? How are you going to strengthen the value that you're creating in society? I mean, if people don't know about it. All right, so this is huge. New Balance definitely was not making their actions visible. So this is actually, and it might go against your better judgment. But this is something that we want. Okay? We want people to know what we're doing, just for the sake of, even if it's just for the sake of knowing what we are doing, right? And we can frame it positively. If they know what we're doing, they're better able to engage with us and support us, and it strengthens the cause. Okay, for example here. So we do want an element of visibility in our actions. Okay. Now, in this unit, I also talk about the concept of fit. So the concept of fit goes back to what we talk about here in terms of centrality. Is it aligned with our organization? Does it make sense given the context of our organization? Now, there's a couple of ways that we can actually determine fit. All right. On the product dimension, all right, there's fit between the products that we sell and the cause. Okay, so it makes sense to consumers that if you are a grocery store, you're donating to a food bank. All right, and hopefully on the surface you can understand why. You're a grocery store, you deal in food, and you're donating to a food bank. Okay. So this is the type of logical connection that we want. Or maybe there's some sort of affinity with a specific audience. If it relates to your particular consumer base. So I put the example of Oshkosh B'gosh here, which is they manufacture different types of kids' clothing and primary education. So on the surface, if it was a clothing manufacturer donating to primary education, there might be a little hesitation in terms of what's going on here, right? Why does a clothing manufacturer care about education? But if you know that, oh wow, this particular clothing manufacturer actually deals with young children, they're targeting young children, so it makes sense given the context of the brand. All right, so fit is achieved in this way. Other ways, and this is kind of the brute force model, right? So if I were to ask you, in the case of Budweiser, right, Budweiser here in St. Louis, if I were to ask you to forget everything that you know about Budweiser, okay, so just completely blank your mind about Budweiser, And now I'm going to tell you that there is a large brewery in St. Louis that is very concerned with, and they invest a lot of money towards the care and maintenance of Clydesdale horses. Right? And I would ask you, what the fit is between that, and a lot of you would be like, what? Like a brewery, a brewery like contributing to like philanthropy towards Clydesdale horses? And sure, you're right. But we know through this established domain, just through brute force of having such a history of dealing with this particular issue, that a company, essentially develops an affinity, a fit with a particular cause, right? And so we know, so your knowledge is back now. We know that with Budweiser, obviously it's been part of their brand image for 100 years now. Okay, so it makes sense. Body Shop, manufacturer of women's cosmetics. Cosmetics are kind of tangentially related to environmental campaigns. And in this case, they've just done it for so long that they've really developed a reputation for it. So the brute force model here is number 3. Now, number 4, if you can justify it through some sort of personal attachment or things relating to that. I put here an example of a CEO, maybe has a child with autism, they donate to Autism Speaks. It makes sense, right? So with regards to centrality, right, there's an element of, can we do something that relates to our core competencies? Can we do something that relates to the expertise that we have in-house? But then also, does it have fit with the consumer, right? Can people look at what we're doing and kind of understand why we are doing it, right? Because we want them to have kind of a snap judgment, right? Be able to instantly understand, or with just maybe a little bit of communication about why we are invested in a particular cause. All right. Now, why is this important? Why is fit important? Well, we can look at consequences of low fit. If we choose to do things as an institution that don't really resonate with our brand or don't have fit with our brand, and we can see some really negative outcomes. Okay? I bring up this study, again, it's kind of old, but it's really kind of foundational. It's indicative of what's of the effect that's happening here. Becker Olson, they published a paper where they had 2 scenarios. They had people rate advertisements from Alpo Pet Foods. Okay, now at the end of the advertisement, Alpo, and this is what they varied. Either it said that Alpo supported the Humane Society, which is animal shelters here, or they supported the Special Olympics. So obviously, Alpo Pet Foods supporting animal shelters, okay, that is high fit, and Alpo Pet Foods supporting the Special Olympics, that's the low fit condition. Now they found that when consumers were exposed to the low fit condition that Alpo was supporting the Special Olympics, people treated what they were doing with more skepticism. They thought about it more negatively, and ultimately they actually had lower purchase intention towards the brand. So now imagine that you're doing something good in your mind. You're doing something good, right? You're supporting a cause like the Special Olympics, and then people actually treat that with lower purchase intention. People actually have negative thoughts towards your brand, even though you're supporting a good cause. Wow, that's kind of wild, right? That's really wild. So this is what made this study pretty intense. Personally, I would argue that it includes appropriateness and timing. I've done some research in the past where I've looked at companies with poor products that invested in social causes, and the fact that their product was poor led them to be rated even more negatively than other companies. The idea being, why are you investing money in these social causes and you're not investing in kind of shoring up your own particular product here? Okay, so that's also an issue, and we can ask ourselves, all right, so if the idea behind this is we're trying to produce some sort of sincerity, and you as business managers, let's say you care about a particular cause. Okay, you care about a cause, your company is investing in a cause, and you want people to know that you are sincere. Like, you're not just doing this for, whatever reason. You actually do harbor these values, right? Honestly, the main thing is a time commitment. Over time, if a company, like the Body Shop, for example, you've invested in a particular cause for so long that ultimately, people believe, like, you've done it for so long that, sure, yeah, you have to care about a particular cause. So this is kind of number one. Special or social investments are perceived to be more sincere if they're having an impact, or perceived to have an impact. So investments that are more impactful actually garner a better reaction from our stakeholders, from the general public. Now, this is the question I asked to my students: how can you manage this? How can you I don't want to say manipulate, because manipulate has a negative connotation, but how can you frame this in a more positive way? And a lot of ways companies do this by focusing on less on the efforts that they're doing, but more on the outcomes that they are doing. All right. So in this instance, what do you think would be more impactful to a consumer? We donated, $100,000 towards STEM college scholarships. Okay, it's a number. It's a thing. Okay, and I'm sure it might have some sort of resonance with a lot of people. But now, what if we said something like, all right, because of our efforts, 50 young people are now able to go to college and get a degree. All right? So the difference between those two is that one is focused on our effort. We've donated this much money, we've put in this much hours of work, and the other is focused on outcomes. Right? Because of our actions, this is what's happened. This number of homes have been built for impoverished people. Right? This amount of people has been able to get an education because of what we've done. Right? So there are some ways that we can actually manage skepticism of our actions, and a lot of times framing it as impact-oriented versus process-oriented can be very powerful in order to affect the reactions of our stakeholders. All right, so good stuff here. I won't go through these. I'll post the PowerPoint online so you can go through here. This is just some examples of good fit. I bring out this example in the text of bad fit, and the idea here was KFC, a company that is essentially produces an unhealthy product for the most part. And I say this because as a teenager, I worked for KFC, and I ate from them all the time. A lot of their products are unhealthy or seen as unhealthy, and they are. And so being associated with a cause that is focused on health, right, wound up being a kind of a poor fit. And I pulled out some news articles with regards to reactions from various news outlets, right? just to kind of illustrate the negative reaction that people had when there was a poor fit between the product and the company. I won't go through this either. This is a thing that I do with my students in the on-the-ground course where we kind of evaluate potential fit here. All right. So I'm going to stop here for right now and just kind of let you guys ingest this idea behind shared value creation and fit, and start asking yourselves these questions, okay, with regards to the business. How can we start making investments? You know, it's one thing to invest in charity, and in a lot of ways that's good. That's a good thing. But you know, how can we be more strategic? How can we focus on ways that not only strengthen our bottom line, but also create value for society, create goodwill, you know, from a utilitarian sense, for the public at large. All right. So yeah, I'll end it here. But anyways, thank you so much for listening, and yeah, I appreciate having a continued dialogue with you about this.